Hi there, this is VimPF from No Nonsense Whisky, and welcome to another episode of Dram Slam, the whisky interview show with some great drams and guests from across the industry. Before we get into the interview, just a quick reminder that all episodes of Dram Slam are available on YouTube as a video and now on your favourite podcast platform. Just search for Dram Slam and you'll find all the available episodes from Season 1, Parts 1 and 2. I also have some merch available, which is the Dram Slam t-shirts. They're available on Teespring. Please check out the links below. And finally, a massive thank you to all of my Patreon supporters who really do help keep shows like this happening. So if you want to help out support the channel, please do check out Patreon and support in any way you can. Links to all these things and more are in the descriptions below. And I'll just bring on my next guest today. And we have Mac, aka Kanpai Planet, and he's a YouTube creator in the heart of Tokyo, dedicated to exploring Japanese drinks and bringing broadcast quality content, and dare I say, even documentary style videos. Excellent to have him on. Let's get into it. All right then, so yeah, we've got Mac in the chair. Hi Mac, how are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, Vin. I don't want to date this recording because it will depend on how quickly you can do the editing on it, I guess. But today was the hottest day in June in recorded history in Tokyo. So outside of that, I'm doing very, very well. Thank you.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. We had a bit of a heat wave in the UK as well, and I mean, as you well know, as an Englishman, if the temperature gets above 30, we all tend to melt a little bit. We can't handle that. But yeah, I've got my fan on. You've got your fan on. Hopefully, everyone can hear the audio all good. But we'll get some good Dram Slam content for everybody. As everyone knows, the format's exactly the same as always. We've got the 6 drams throughout season 1 on the table. Matt's got those over in Tokyo, and I've got them over here. And the first one, as always, is the Jura 18. And again, as always, we like to talk about the whiskey origin story. So, Mac, what got you into whiskey in the first place?
Like many people, it wasn't my drink of choice when I was younger. And it's amazing what a commonality that is, right? Even amongst some of our YouTube content creating colleagues around the world, right? Who you've asked the same question to, people who are at the forefront of presenting their enthusiasm now. Even if you went back 10 years ago, they absolutely wouldn't have been in a position to do that. So it is interesting how, very, very few people say, oh, yeah, well, my first drink when I was 16 was whiskey. And that was very much me. I actually hated brown spirits, during my teenage years and actually even into my 20s. I spent the summer of 2005 working in Edinburgh. And of course, you can't live in that city, one of my favorite places on earth, without having some exposure to the water of life. So even then, though, despite trying a few drams here and there, still couldn't really get into it. It was actually for me only after I came to Japan and started drinking in what we call the izakayas here, kind of the restaurant pubs, which are the lifeblood of Tokyo and Japan nightlife. That I started drinking whiskey, and my first entry into whiskey was the highball. So in 2008, after 25 years of declining whiskey sales in Japan, Suntory started aggressively marketing the whiskey and soda, served in pretty much a pint glass over a lot of ice, the highball, and it was kind of through that really that then I started exploring and thinking, something's definitely changed in my palate because I'm quite liking this.
Yeah, I mean, the highball is pretty much like a Japanese staple, isn't it? They're a big fan of highballs over there.
Yeah, they really are. Like I said, Suntory managed to kickstart this incredible highball boom in 2008, which they have just announced that they're doubling down on. They're going to release a 16% beer called the Beer Ball, which people can dilute with soda and pour over ice as well, from 16% ABV down to your preferred alcohol percentage. So there's clearly something in the whole format of adding, a higher ABV liquid, and then having it nice and chilled and cold over ice and and with soda as well.
Nice, nice. I think you might be the first one that I've spoken to so far that came into it through cocktails though, which is cool. I like that because so far most people have mirrored me, and that's they've started out with the blends, and I've no idea how anyone got into whiskey by drinking the supermarket blends, because that's not a good way to start. But anyway, it's good to have more whiskey fans in the world, no matter how they came into it.
No, you're absolutely right, Vin. But it was through that, the highball and then going on. So the predominant whiskey here that's used in highballs is Suntory Kakubin, literally, the square bottle or the rectangular bottle, which is the tortoise shelled and is synonymous really with highballs in Japan. So it was then querying, the Suntory, what other whiskies do they make? Of course, Yamazaki, Hakushu, Hibiki. Like I mentioned, 2008 was really the absolute low of Japanese whiskey sales over the last few decades. And that was when, in the face of this downward trend, the Chichibu distillery started, who are now very, very famous around the world in Japanese whiskey circles, and exploring what they had to offer, starting to visit distilleries and really taking it from there.
Now we have the Jura 18 in front of us. Is this something you've tried before? Have you had any experience with Jura in general?
It's quite an interesting brand for me, Jura. It's never been one that I've gone to in a bar, actually. I've never looked at the shelves and thought, the combination of branding, brand name and design, and the distillery's reputation that has made me think, I need to pay premium price for this thing. The times that I have tried it, there's actually a liquor store in Ginza called 777. Ginza is a very, very expensive part of Tokyo. It's where you would get your boutiques, your Louis Vuitton, your Gucci, clearly places where I don't shop at all. But what you do get is this premium liquor store, really, with an amazing selection. And they will actually sell you the drams at cost. So it's quite an interesting system they have. If the bottle costs between 0 and 4,000 yen, it's 100 yen for 10 milliliters, which is about a US dollar, roughly. If it's between 4,000 to 8,000 yen, it's $2 and so on. So it's been in that environment where I've gone, okay, let's try a few of the Jura range.
Okay. What do you think of the 18 year then?
It's an interesting one, Vin. I've not got anything bad to say about it, but I haven't got anything overwhelmingly good either. It's an interesting one, right? 44% ABV, I think.
I'll have to remind myself. Yeah, 44, yeah.
Right. So that's neither, the benchmark 40, right? Nor is it, giving us a bit of body as you start to hit the 48s and so on. I mean, it has that added color, and at that ABV, it's almost certainly non-chill filtered, which, for an 18-year-old is a little bit disappointing. I can always kind of understand a bit of that for maybe the younger expressions, right? That maybe you do intend to be mixed, but as you get older, I always just think, okay, 18 above, you should just give a natural presentation to that. I mean, it's okay. I just there's not a huge amount of complexity going on here.
Yeah, 100%. I think that kind of mirrors the opinions all the way through this as well. It's like it's just fine. I'm glad it exists really, because it's a nice cheap. I say cheap. It's a nice value whiskey for the age statements on it. But just like you say, I'm after some a little bit more integrity and a little bit more like interesting flavors from it. But I'll happily sit and sip this of an evening. Not sure I would buy it again. I do have another bottle because Somerton sent me one a couple of like last year, which I've still got sealed. But it'll take me a while to get through that. But yeah, it's all right, I think. So next up, we've got the Firkin 49, and this is a Tullibardine, nearly 10 years, I think, maybe just less, 8 or 9, that's been finished in Oloroso and Amontillado. But while we're letting that air out, I want to ask you, obviously you're in the heart of Japan, as we mentioned earlier, and I know you're or were at least a big travel guy. So what took you to Japan, or at least made you stay there?
Great question, Vin. I first came here in 2002, and for those with good memories, the World Cup was held here and in South Korea. Uh, and I was here for 17 days. I got to see the first four England games, so the first three group games, and then the round of 16 match. And because of the way that the England games were around the country, the first game was just north of Tokyo, then the famous 1-0 Beckham penalty against Argentina up in Sapporo, which is famous for the beer brand, then all the way back down to Osaka against Nigeria, where me and my friends, we'd got tickets for the round of 16 game for the team that finished second in our group. And we thought that that would be England uh, with Argentina coming top. But because of the results that we had had against Argentina, um, they were actually not in contention. We were hoping for a 0-0 draw against Nigeria so that potentially Sweden finished top, and then we would get to see England for the match that we had tickets for. And that is exactly how it played out. And then we went on to beat Denmark 3-0 in Niigata, which is kind of at the opposite sort of apex of the banana, as it were, that kind of the main island of Japan is, which is called Honshu. And then I had to come home. It's funny because I was on TV a few times actually during the tournament, and on our penultimate night, GMTV, Good Morning Television, interviewed me and my mate in Roppongi, which is a famous nightlife district in Tokyo. And they asked us, "Oh, are you thinking about getting tickets for the Brazil game, which was going to be the next round match, and skiving off work?" And we're like, "You told us this is going out live, right? You know, not like not now that you're interviewing us on TV and my boss is watching this." So anyway, so that's when I really fell in love with Japan. And actually, more than just Japan, I fell in love with Tokyo. I really felt that this was a great city to live in. And I always felt that my destiny lay outside the UK. I still do find it quite strange that we are wedded to the piece of earth that our parents decided that we would be, born in and brought up in. So I was training to be an actuary at the time. And after some persuasion from my parents, because I really did want to get here as soon as possible, I was encouraged to continue with that and qualify first before moving over. So I qualified in November 2005, spent 2 weeks in a drunken stupor celebrating that, started looking for jobs, and by August 2006, I'd quit my job in London and I was starting a new job here. And I've really never looked back. That's 16 years ago now.
Absolutely amazing. I mean, you're quite right. I ventured a bit further away from my birthplace, but not far. It was only about an hour's drive away. So, yeah, very very brave of you, and I'm kind of a little bit jealous that I don't really have the uh, the ideas in the back of my head to go and emigrate somewhere else. But one day, who knows? Who knows?
Well, if you ever do, I really hope you join me in Tokyo. It's an absolute fantastic city. I'm very lucky. I've been to 108 countries, and I really do think that this is the world's greatest metropolis, which is the tagline for my travel business, actually. It's how I often talk about Tokyo. And that combination of safety, efficiency, the people, the food, and the culture is incredible and really does make it such a livable city.
Yeah, Japan has been on my hit list for a long time, and I looked like I was getting close to getting over there at one point, and then I had children, so I'm gonna have to wait a little bit longer. But maybe a whiskey event will drag me over there one day. I would definitely love to visit, and you'll be my first call without a doubt.
Looking forward to it already. And of course, it's now a great time to come as a whiskey fan as well, because as I'm sure you've seen from my content, Vin, which I know you watch religiously, we've had this massive explosion in distilleries over the last 6-7 years. They're dishing out whiskey licenses even now like there's no tomorrow. So, where once upon a time you had some of those big players I mentioned early on, Suntory, Nikka, and then Kirin Mars, and then from 2008 onwards, Chichibu, they're now joined by a slew of craft distilleries. And I can't keep up fast enough with the releases at the moment.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, we've got the Firkin 49 in front of us. Then I imagine this is a fairly new brand for you, although I do know that they have a presence in Japan. So is this something you've tried already?
No, I've watched so many of your Firkin reviews, and I know you're a massive fan of their bottlings, and it's made me super excited. Actually, looking forward to a trip to the UK to actually, be able to sample them, hopefully with you in person. So this is actually my first Firkin whiskey, and I've got to say I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's a good one. I enjoy it. It's not the one that really switched me onto them, but in the scheme of this lineup, I think it works really well as a step up from that kind of starting point of Jura to get into a flight, because it's, for me, it's not like, I mean, I'm not a huge sherry finish fan, but I think this is challenging because it doesn't really give many of those traditional sherry notes, I don't think.
Right, you've got, um, some of those, the raisins, the dates. You've got some of that caramel as well, and the deep. There is a bit of a deep sweetness there that you do often get with Oloroso sherry cask aged whiskies, but no, there's a lot more going on as well. Yeah, I'm really enjoying this one.
How do you feel about trying some Fireball then?
I mean, listen, you've sent it to me all the way from England. It would be rude not to, my friend.
I mean, please. I've got some here in front of me as well, so I'll be drinking along with you. But please feel free not to drink the whole thing. Have you tried Fireball before?
All right, here it is. Bloody hell, cinnamon-tastic.
Traditionally, I kind of don't have sort of questions here, but I had so many for you that I have got a question while we're sort of mulling it over, um, and that was that. Of course, you cover all Japanese drinks, alcoholic drinks. That's the idea behind Kanpai Planet. What made you go to video and to YouTube specifically as your platform? Because you could have done anything. You could have done blogs. You could have done. I guess you could even done books or whatever. But what is about video that really makes you sing on YouTube?
By asking that question, you're bringing up both good and bad memories because anybody who's operated in video knows just what a insert your own expletive uh, there it is, right?
Yeah.
I have a travel business which is called Maction Planet, and that started in 2017. And when I started that business, I created a presence across pretty much every social media platform, certainly Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So if anybody's watching, you can go and check all of those out at Maction Planet, and also YouTube. And then the pandemic happened, and I was busy starting to sort of ramp up the video game on the Maction Planet YouTube. I had some success with vlogs that I filmed during the Rugby World Cup. So some of those had got tens of thousands, and some over 100,000 views. So I thought, oh, they're looking good. And then, of course, as we all know, the next video that you drop after that, gets 10 views, and you're like, hang on, what exactly happened here? But in October 2020, due to the pandemic, Japan actually closed its borders to tourism. And I decided to kind of double down on YouTube. I set myself the goal of making one video every week for 12 weeks. Lots of different styles of video as well. I made a music video, some straight to camera stuff, some like more regular vlogs, some food reviews. As part of that, I kind of ramped up my editing skills, and I thought, okay, well, maybe there's an opportunity to do some more video here. Now, a little bit earlier than that, I had started a project on the Maction Planet YouTube called Tokyo Taste Test. And this was meant to be a way for me to make some faster content than, some like really in-depth vlog. So basically me, reviewing a drink and posting it up there. So you can find those. There's like, for example, Vanilla Float Coca-Cola. We really love these like Japan exclusive soda flavors here. There's a Coca-Cola strawberry on there. I did a review of chankonabe, which is a sumo wrestling food that the sumo guys guzzle to bulk up muscle and carbohydrate. I wanted to really double down on that taste test and double down on video, right? But I realized if I did that, I would need a new brand, a new platform for it. I really wanted the quality level to be higher than what I'd previously done before on Maction Planet. When you have a channel that has rugby vlogs, that has a Super Nintendo World video, right? That has me going to some festivals. As you know, YouTube likes it simple, no nonsense whiskey. There's there's two main clues there as to what it's about. It's whiskey, and there's little to no nonsense, right? So I decided if I was going to kind of almost dilute the channel with a lot of whiskey and sake content, then it needed to be on a separate channel. And so Kanpai Planet was born out of that.
Excellent. Oh, I like it. I like it, and you hit some good notes about what it's like to be a YouTuber behind the scene, because it really does take a lot of work, and a lot of people don't know that when you drop in a video every week or whatever your schedule is, it's people don't see the work that goes in behind that. They just see the drop. So yeah, I appreciate that. And to end it on a sour note, we're going to be trying some Fireball. So maybe that was the wrong question to ask.
And maybe that was I see what you did there, because it's pretty sweet. So it's not very sour at all. I mean, what can I say? It gets a bad rap, of course. I mean, but it's not. I mean, it's not intended to compete with the Yamazaki 25, right? It's not. It's it's not even really a whiskey, right? It's a party drink in the same way that Jägermeister is, right? You're going to be doing some shots of this, right? More than you are going to be sipping it and interrogating its mouthfeel and complexity. My issue with it is I do have a very sweet tooth, but I'm not a huge fan of cinnamon. So, it's not my favorite sweet profile.
Yeah, I get that. I'm pretty much the same.
Yeah, but I echo actually the views of Roy Aquavite when he appeared on the first Dram Slam. Is that it's a perfectly passable liquid in my opinion, right? It does what it says on the tin. I mean, cloying even by my sweet tooth standards, but nothing that a big mouthful of water can't. Speaking of which, cleanse the palate, and then you can move on to the next one. What do you honestly think about it?
Oh, well, I mean, I think it's dreadful. I mean, it's like I mean, I've drank it every single episode of this, and I have to say, it is getting easier to palate. But once this series is over, I shall be looking for an excuse to give that bottle to somebody else. So, if you're in the UK and fancy an open bottle of Fireball, then let me know in the comments below, because I won't be finishing that. That's for sure.
Offer is only available to people who are subscribed to both Kanpai Planet and No Nonsense Whiskey.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'll be wanting picture evidence of that in my inbox. But yeah, thanks for humouring me on that on the Fireball. Well, let's try and get some Fireball out of our mouths then, and go to some cask strength no nonsense whiskey, as you kindly mentioned earlier, the no nonsense vibes.
So, Vin, I should say that I actually own both of your bottles. They're over there on the edge of the screen, and they're not open. So, this is legitimately going to be the absolute first time I've tried one of them. It's a bit embarrassing. I think I was actually one of the first people to go in and make sure I purchased them, right? I was absolutely uh, all over making sure I wanted to support you. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic initiative and a real inspiration for all of us, trying to build a brand, on Whiskey Tube, to have your logo on a couple of bottlings which you selected yourself was absolutely fantastic. So a belated congratulations on that, at least face to face, or as face to face as video will let us be. So I'm super excited. Oh,
Yeah, it needs a bit of airing out, I think. So I've got a question for you while we're doing that. Now, we've been talking about Kanpai Planet and how it covers kind of all Japanese drinks, but bringing it back to Japanese whiskey specifically, everyone's into Japanese whiskey. We know that it's come from a stock of good quality, but what is it you think that makes about Japanese whiskey that makes everyone go nuts?
I mean, hopefully anybody who's watched this far can tell how much I love Tokyo and I love Japan, my home for the last 16 years and beyond. there is a huge amount of quality product that's being put out by Japan's distilleries, including Japan's new distilleries here. I do think, concurrent with that, that there's a bit of a fetishization about Japanese whiskey. So, a combination of the scarcity of the product itself and the Japan brand, which has really risen incredibly over the last 14 years or so. I think, for example, in 2008, we welcomed 5 million visitors to Japan. In 2019, we welcomed 31.8 million visitors to Japan. And with that rising tide has risen many, many ships. Obviously, the direct travel here, but also the popularity of anime, the popularity of manga, the popularity of Japan's computer games as well. Even things that were popular before have become increasingly popular. Now, what's happened during that period that I just described, unfortunately for Suntory and Nikka, 25 years of declining sales. About 20 years ago, they started to really cut production. Rumor has it that around 2002, 2003, they were operating their distilleries for 1 day a week. So when the boom really started happening around that time, these whiskeys started winning awards, getting recognition internationally in certain high-profile books as well, from certain high-profile authors. As you know, whiskey's a long-tail business, so there wasn't enough to meet that demand. That lack of supply, that scarcity, has meant that you've had that perfect storm, right, of something becoming more popular, not enough to go round. And I think that's led to hype. However, as you know, when you do get various stereotypes, there's often a kernel of truth within them. So one of the things you often hear about, in fact, across Japanese manufacturing, is the concept of Kaizen, which means continuous improvement. That is absolutely present in the distilleries that I visited. You can really sense that kind of behavior is ingrained there. The second one is because historically things are changing at the moment, but Suntory and Nikka have had quite an adversarial relationship. They're never going to swap stocks to make a blend like a Johnny Walker. So if you're Suntory, you've had to make a huge variety of whiskey. I think, in fact, in terms of kind of, I guess these sort of things sort of depend on how you classify them, but the way that they can produce different distillates through a large number of different still shapes, for distilleries their size, far, far more than you see in many other places in the world, right? Aging in a variety of wood types. One of the things you find in Japan is we don't have the same wood regulations as you do in Scotland. So basically, these guys can age in pretty much anything they want. They're producing a huge number of different component whiskies, for their blends, and now they're releasing increasingly more and more in terms of single malts as well. So that is something that I think is quite characteristic of Japan.
Excellent. And where do you think whiskey sits in Japanese opinion compared to the other drinks over there? Because I know drinking is a fairly integral part of Japanese culture. So yeah, how popular is Japanese whiskey over there?
It is getting increasingly popular. I guess here, when we talk about whiskey, you really have to differentiate into two categories. There's, the cheap stuff, and then there's, the single malts. And that's the part that the rest of the world is kind of more interested in. It's amazing to imagine, but, even as late as maybe 7, 8 years ago, you'd be able to walk into stores here and find Japanese whiskies, on the shelves, sometimes gathering dust. There's a very famous series of Chichibu issued whiskies, which is called the Card Series. Uh, I'm sure you've heard of them, pretty legendary. You've seen some of the auction prices that, some of these bottles, or the Old Timer Complete series hits the market, and what insane pricing they go for. But 12 years ago, you could walk into some of the famous high profile whiskey shops in Tokyo, and like I said, they'd be there at RRP, and they'd be gathering dust on the shelf. So that's been a big change. Like now, domestically, it's very difficult to find, some of the bottles that we would all love to get our hands on. Hakshu 12 or some of these limited edition Suntory releases, or even the releases from these new distilleries. I mean, there is a reason why I film in a bar, and that's because it's actually very, very difficult to get my hands on these things in the primary market.
Well, I've left you waiting long enough to try this no nonsense whiskey. Let's see what you think of it.
Ooh,
Quite a jump in ABV.
yeah, but are you sure that this is 6 years old? Because it definitely belies its age, right? I think.
I think we put it on there to kind of give it the truth factor of it all. But yeah, if I'd have took the age statement off of it, I think it would have confused a lot of people for sure.
Yeah, I would definitely have picked a number, a double-digit number for this one in terms of a guess at its age. And the ABV, which is what exactly?
It's 59.8.
Yeah, so with a 59.8% ABV, the alcohol is actually very, very well integrated into this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I brush onto chemistry with my day job, and yeah, for sure. I think. I mean, I'm a big fan of cask strength whiskey anyway. Naturally presented whiskey is usually the best. It's not always better, but usually the best. And that's why I picked this. It suits my palate, which is probably the mistake of someone like making whiskey and sending it out to the world to make it for you rather than for them. But that's what I did.
It's funny you've touched on that, actually. That's something I really try hard to do with my reviews, right? It's all very well just going, I like this or I don't like this, right? But that's just, I actually don't find that very helpful. That's why my video format tends to be very information heavy. So, regardless of whether you agree with any of my tasting notes, you at least have something that you've gone away with, like, what how this whiskey was constructed. You've learned a lot about the distillery itself. But even when I get onto the tasting, I'm always trying to think not so much whether I liked it or not, but whether there's something that could be considered a real fault here, um, whether there are characteristics which, on the whole, just would generally lead to an unpleasant experience with this whiskey. And then even when I find them, I try to think, well, why is that? Is it because casks are getting tired? Is it because the guys just think that they can sell anything with that brand and have just slapped it out there? Is it because of maybe a lack of experience that some of these newer distilleries have? So yes, it's always a good idea to think beyond just your own palate, I think, whether you're making whiskey or whether you're making videos about whiskey.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I tend to do the same thing with my channel. To try to take I mean, it's obviously impossible to remove your own opinion entirely, but I try to remove it as much as I can. And I certainly the angle I go for. I think we align quite neatly on this, but is that there's no sense getting angry about a whiskey, and I see some people get angry about their whiskeys, and that's fine. I get that, but there's one man's trash is another man's treasure, as they say. So just because I don't like the Fireball, going full circle back to that, I don't like it, but we've talked fairly positively about that being it is what it is. It knows what it is, and it's not marketed to the people that are going to think ill of it. It's marketed to the people that love it, and people do love it. It sells very well. So yeah, I always try to look for a positive, even if I don't personally like a whiskey. And I think you do the same. To be fair.
I've managed to engage with a fantastic community of people who leave the most incredible comments on my videos. And sometimes there are people who completely disagree with my view, and they're actually very respectful and they'll apologize. And I always say, you have nothing to apologize for. I didn't make the whiskey. I just drank it and liked it, or consumed it and thought that, a better job could have been done, and here are my reasons why. All the better for you if you actually like it, right? Because nothing makes me happier on the whole than liking things that I paid for, right? It tends to be my modus operandi. So again, I think sometimes people can mistake passion for maybe perspective, right? Me and you, I mean, if you think about the time that you've spent over what now, 6 years, Vin?
It's very close to 6 years now. Yeah.
Right. And for me, about a year and a half, right? Sharing our passion for these drinks with the world. But at the end of the day, it's meant to be fun. And, as I really do love the phrase that Aquavite Roy uses, which is that we're enthusiasts, right? So we're just trying to share that passion, build some community, put some new information out there. And, you know, let's all just keep that perspective.
Yeah, I often find. I mean, I like. I like to share my comments with other YouTubers that I get sometimes because I mean these aren't when I'm talking about these people, these aren't people that are in the community that we know and we love. These are people that have just caught a video of mine and want to share their two pence. But sometimes I feel like I have to remind people that I mean this is YouTube we're talking about. This isn't the BBC, and there are great quality videos like yourself, and then there are people like me who sit in their study. I'm just giving my opinion. I'm not saying that it's fact. I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone else or I should be listened to more than anyone else. I'm just giving my opinion because, like you say, I'm an enthusiast. And I feel like sometimes I have to remind some of the commenters that I'm just a guy who likes whiskey and has a camera.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand what you're saying. It's a pretty thankless job as well, right? I mean, you know, I love it when people ask me, "Oh, Mac, you've got over 1,000 subscribers now. You're monetized, right?" Well, yes, I am. The dollar a day is, you know, literally on average $1 a day for the kind of view counts I'm getting now, which are actually pretty good by a lot of people's standards, right? So that gives you some context. It's pretty thankless. That's why a lot of people start these Patreons, right? Or uh, the buy me a coffee that I have, or turn on the super thanks. So because you want to at least even cover the cost of the whiskey, let alone the hours and hours of editing and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking about this in the green room before we started, but it's very much like especially at our level, we do it for the passion of whiskey. Some people do it for the passion of editing. I know you love editing. I'm not a huge fan of editing, but you have to edit. You can't just put out a raw video. Well, I mean you can do whatever you want on YouTube. That's the point of it, right? But yeah, I do it for the passion of whiskey, and to be able to talk about whiskey in any capacity, to have anyone listen is a real bonus for me. Like when I started doing this, I genuinely thought nobody would ever watch any of my videos. So to sit where I am now with even a handful of views is perfect for me. I love that. I love that.
I think what you've done is absolutely incredible, Vin. I mean, even this series, Dram Slam, and engaging us, other content creators around the world, even being able to get these whiskies to me in Tokyo. I mean, you've come a long way from 6 years ago to have your brand on a couple of bottles, one of which I can at least verify for everybody watching is really pretty fantastic, is a great achievement. So, and for me, you've been an inspiration and actually a mentor as well over the last year. Your experience on YouTube has been invaluable, and I really appreciate that. So, a heartfelt kanpai from Tokyo to you, my friend.
I'll drink to that. Thanks for that. Kind words. Cheers. Okay then, so we're on the back straight. We've got a couple of not heavily peated, but definitely peated whiskies. How do you sit with peat? Do you drink much peat? Because there isn't much peat going around Japanese whiskies at the moment, is there?
We've had a new distillery start up about 6 years ago, Akeshi up in Hokkaido, and they're really, trying to be like the Isla of Japan. I think with a lot of their expressions. So it's coming more and more. I've actually been caught out in blind tastings, even. David, who runs Aloha Whiskey, where I film a lot of my review videos, passed me a dram completely blind at the end of a video I was filming a few months ago. And I just took a whiff, took a swig, and I'm like, oh, definitely Scotch, And he's like, no, actually. And yeah, it ended up being quite a small Japanese distillery who were making some pretty nice, 60, 70 ppm whiskey. So it's definitely something that's starting to come in. I did a live stream with on Roy's Aquavite channel last September, and one of the things I commented in terms of, say, the changing palate here in Japan, and also Japan's acceptance of peat, you can look for little clues. Suntory released some expressions which in the past they used to label as heavily peated, and now they label as just peated. You see the distinction I'm trying to make? It where once they may have been warning people, whoa, you guys really may not like this, now they're just like, oh, we think, there's some peat here, and we think you're going to be okay with it. So yeah, definitely things are changing, and you're seeing a greater appetite for some heavy peat here.
Well, the first one of the two we've got is the McMira Svenska Rook, which we'll get into in a moment. And I want to kind of bring it back to sort of away from the whiskey in Japan. And I want to ask you, if it weren't for whiskey, if whiskey never made it to Japan's shores, but you were still there as you are now, what would be your go-to drink? So you can't have a highball now because that's out the window.
Sure. It would be beer, and it would be Nihonshu, known for you, Vin, overseas as sake, or I guess pronounced sake uh, in the UK. So I've always been a beer drinker, and obviously the last 10, 15 years of craft beer boom has been absolutely a joy to experience and to be a part of. And then since I've come to Japan, I've discovered the joys of sake, and with no whiskey, those would be what I would be focused on. And to be fair, I do spend my time kind of between those three areas. So yeah, although it's easy for us to focus a lot on whiskey, it's funny. I was in Kagoshima, which is famous for its shochu. It's also the nearest big city to the Kanosuke and the Tsunuki distilleries, both of whom are featured on Kanpai Planet. And I was hanging out with a friend of mine down there, and she took a photo of us having a coffee and a photo of another kind of drinks content creator and her and having a coffee, and then put those two photos up side by side with the caption, "See, we do actually drink, other things." So the short answer to your question is beer and sake.
It's good. I didn't actually have this written down as a question, but I am interested to see because you've helped me with sake in the past, and it's still something I haven't taken the leap on. I seem to be afraid to start. But what advice, other than sort of obviously checking out your great videos, especially at the start of your journey when you were covering more sake, what advice would you give to somebody who hasn't really tried much or any at all in the world or around the UK to go about getting into sake?
Three simple words, Vin. Go for it. Just absolutely take the plunge. Buy a bottle. I understand it is more expensive, unfortunately, what you guys are paying over there versus here. But there's a lot of sake being made, overseas now as well. For all of us sake advocates out there, what we really want to see is the category growing worldwide. So before you worry about what Junmai means and what Daiginjo means, and you can find out by watching my video, 5 tips to up your Japanese sake game, and then a 9-part series which I made focusing on the 1 week I spent actually making Japanese sake. So, please go ahead and watch those, and you'll have a huge amount of context for what you're going to be buying and trying. But first of all, just go and within your budget, just find some bottles and, buy them and try them. You're going to get a sense for, at least whether you're going to become a fan of the category. And don't just try one, please give it a few. Of course, think about it this way. You've got 1,200 or so, just under, sake breweries in Japan, between them making about 20,000 individual sake. Think about it like you would wine. If you tried a wine, and then you said to me, "I don't like wine," I'd be like, "Yeah, okay, fair enough. But what did you try? Was it a white? Was it a red? Was it sweet, dry? Full bodied, lighter? What country did it come from? Right? And you would at least explore, a bit of French wine, a bit of German, some different grape varieties before you decided there's absolutely no way I'm touching anything with the words WINE on the bottle." So yeah, very simply, go for it, take the plunge. And the category's so wide, and people are making such a variety of different sake that I'm convinced that there's going to be a flavor profile for everybody to enjoy.
Yeah, good answer, good answer. And I am gonna do it one day. I promise. I'm gonna buy an expensive bottle over here and just get into it because it's something I don't know why, but there's something in the back of my brain. Like you mentioned earlier, a lot about Japanese culture. I sort of like on the Venn diagram, I skirt it ever so keenly. So I take out like the top end of it all. So I'm like, I've got a couple of mangas, but only really like one series, and I like some animes, but only really the most popular things. But yeah, sake is something that I've always wanted to try. So I'm gonna I'm gonna get into it. I promise. I promise.
I think I know you well enough to know that you're probably worried you'll get too much into it, right?
Yeah, I can't cover it on the channel. Well, I mean, I could, but it's not distilled, is it? It's brewed, so it doesn't even count.
Very good. See, somebody's been paying attention to watching Making Sake on Sado.
Yeah, and it's a good point to say right now as well. I know I said it at the start on my intro, but all of these things we've been talking about, all of Mac's videos and whatnot, will be in the show notes below. So yeah, feel free to go down there. I mean, 100% subscribe anyway, but go and check out those particular videos if anything piques your interest. How about we try some of this McMira then? Have you tried much McMira? I don't suppose it makes its way to your shores much, does it?
You can find McMira here now. One of the ways that I've been able to try a few McMira expressions has been that a fan of the channel, a gentleman called Martin, actually has connected with me, and we meet up and we exchange samples. And as he is Swedish, has been able to get me some nice Swedish distillery whiskey. So I've been able to try some High Coast, and I've been able to try some McMiras as well. I've never tried this particular expression though.
Mm, okay, let's get into it and see what you think.
Oh, that's really nice actually. But a little bit there's a bit of funk there, something a bit different going on, right? In a blind tasting of some smokier, peatier drams, you definitely wonder, what was happening there, whether it was some kind of interesting cask finish, right? It's not quite Isla Peat going on with this one.
No, do you know what? That's very astute of you as well, especially if you haven't tried it before. But they, the way they smoke it is they have 10% of the smoking material is juniper woods, juniper branches. Yeah, very astute to pick up that there's a difference there because there is. There's just like you say, there's something about it, and unless you knew that or had someone telling you that, you'd never guess it.
I don't think I'd have picked up the juniper now, of course, with that wonderful suggestibility that comes through, you know, being told the tasting note. There's a gin note there, right?
It's good. It's good because McMira have a really good ability to get their baseline characteristic, their DNA, through their entire range. I find as well. So for me, there's a couple of little tropical notes in this as well that go through their whole range. But yeah, as you know, I'm a big fan of McMira as well. I mean, I'm a big fan of all of this apart from the Fireball. But that's the reason why they're on here. It was never to challenge anybody. It was to kind of share great whiskey, I guess.
Well, I got to thank you for allowing me to be part of that single cask bottling that you've done, that you kind of spearheaded.
I still have your bottles up here on my shelf.
Absolutely fantastic, and I'm looking forward to getting my hands on them as well. I've heard really great things from the people who have tried them and reviewed them, so super super excited for that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Imagine this at 60%, near enough. It's not quite 60, but near enough. Yeah, I don't mess about when I'm talking about no nonsense whiskey. It's got to be cask strength, right? Because that's the whole ethos of it all. Is that it might not be the best ABV for the whiskey, but it allows you to choose what ABV you drink it at, rather than me choosing it for you. So it always had to be cask strength, always.
It's interesting. I guess I'm starting to rediscover a love of blends again. I know in terms of some people's whiskey philosophy, they always talk about, so obviously single malt has become the thing, and beyond that, single cask. But with blending, you're actually getting a human element in there, right? That I really enjoy discovering, right? The skill of the chief blender, the master blender, trying to mix and match those things. And when blends get it right, they are absolutely fantastic. So I'm an equal opportunities employer, I like the blends, I like the single malts. One interesting thing you've had in Japan recently is distilleries making grain, even some of the smaller ones starting to make grain. So Kirin, who are actually the third largest distillery, just dropped uh, an expression of their Fuji, which is single blended. So they're making malt and grain at the Mount Fuji distillery, as it's known in English, and they're making a blend out of that. And I'm really excited for the future of kind of blended whiskey and single distillery blended whiskey in Japan.
Yeah, no, good. I mean, I completely agree. When I started this channel, it's well documented that I wasn't a big fan of peat, actually. But the reasons why I started the channel were just to enthuse about whiskey. When I started to gain a following, I quickly realised that I couldn't discount any one genre. If I'm going to call myself No Nonsense Whiskey, I can't go, oh, No Nonsense Whiskey apart from peat or blends or sherry cask finishes or anything else that I'm not particularly disposed towards. And I always think that. I mean, unless you're going to call yourself No Nonsense, peated finish, whatever, then if you're going to review whiskey, you should be open to it all, one way or another. You know, to give a good view of it, and not just discount something immediately because it's not quite what you like. That's just my opinion, but that's all this is, right? So it's I powered through, and now I'm a big fan of peat. And this isn't heavily peated at all, is it? It's kind of a light peat. How about we move on to the last one then, which is the Glasgow 1770 Peated. Obviously, the first part of this Dram Sam show came out in December last year, but I actually voted this my whiskey of the year last year. So, um, yeah, I don't know how are you able to get hold of this again. I know I've asked you that for every single one, but this is a fairly small new distillery.
There's so much money in whiskey now, and getting that international distribution early means that we are very lucky to get uh, people like Cotswolds, the Lakes, Bimba in Japan, and and to get them very, very quickly. I, however, have not tried any Glasgow, so this is another first here. Beautiful color, this one.
Yeah, it's all natural color as well, which is good for its age. I mean, we're literally talking about a 3-year-old whiskey here.
Me and you're in the same boat, right? Because we end up reviewing a lot of 3-year-old whiskey from these distilleries that kind of started distilling in 2016. So for me, there'd be Kanosuke, Sakurao, Shizuoka, and for a lot of the expressions, they do not taste like we would expect a 3-year-old whiskey to taste. They've gone out there, right, and they've understood a lot more about fermentation, perhaps. They've understood a lot more about getting the most out of the casks, maybe as fast as possible, and that technology, right, that kind of improvement in just the knowledge of whiskey making that these younger distilleries have internalized is definitely showing through. This is another one. There is a bit more youth in this one, I think, but it's that good kind, which is giving body and punch, and structure to the liquid. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say this a lot off screen. Obviously, the idea of my videos is that they tend to be sort of 5 to 10 minutes. Obviously, long form Dram Slam is a bit different, but one of the things I always say is that these newer distilleries, and it'll probably be the same in Japan, is they have to design their liquid at a fundamental level to be able to go into stuff like virgin oak or really like fresh casks. And it's something that the old guards, let's say, of Scotch, the ones that have been around for hundreds of years, they don't do. If you put their liquid into virgin oak or a Pedro Jimenez cask for 3 years, the character of that liquid will just be completely like demolished, because they create their liquid to be put into a first fill or a refill cask for 12, 15, 18 years. So that's what a lot of people don't get, is that there's some science that goes on in the background, and vice versa. If you put this liquid that's been designed for 3 years in a cask into a refill cask for that many years, it won't work on the other end. It won't be the same. It won't be as nice as some of the long-standing brands.
You're absolutely right, Vin. I think that science is really fascinating, right? Whether it's occurring at the fermentation level, even the use of different yeasts, right? That are bringing out different notes. Again, for the big boys with massive warehouses who are established and not worried about paying their mortgages anymore, the cask character may give some of these notes, right? We want those notes to be there after 3 years, which means they kind of need to be in the distillate from the beginning, and then aged in, as you said, the right cask types, to then mean that we can have something in the market that people are actually going to want to buy, outside of the hype that just means that kind of everything sells out immediately at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm glad you enjoy this. Like you say, I mean, for me, it was my whiskey of the year, and I never suggest anybody base their opinion entirely on my opinion. Um, but yeah, I think it's a wonderful example, and they just released actually fairly new information. It's not new for time recording, but they've just released the full size bottles because these are half liters over here. So yeah, and it's the same price as well, which I think is a good quality move. Um, but yeah, I mean that's actually quite neat because now, I mean, my final question to you, as I do with everybody, is what's the future of Kanpai Planet? I mean, you've made your Sado kind of series, which was excellent from start to finish. You've been sort of doing a couple of reviews. Have you got anything in the pipeline you can tell us about, or where do you see yourself in like a year or 2 years?
Sure. I always like to be very, very transparent because, I think that we have a responsibility as content creators, especially video content creators, to not hide behind the realities of that. And that is that, every cut that you make in a video, every piece of B-roll that you add takes time, right? There's a, you know, however fast you get at it, actually concurrent with that, your desire for higher quality shoots you in the foot. So you end up actually taking even longer than you used to, as you edit more and more videos. The upshot of that is that, my profession is guiding, and I'm really hoping that Japan opens its borders fully again so that all of you guys watching can come and visit. And if you are into your drinks, then the drinks culture here is really second to none on earth. We can buy a lot of scotch here cheaper than you can over in the UK, unfortunately for you, but it's fantastic for me. So that's where my time uh, will lie. Now, I'm very passionate about the Kanpai Planet project, and I do want to continue putting out a regular schedule of videos. Uh, we're going to have to see what that looks like. Like I said, as kind of my full time job, and the rent payer kind of comes back in. There are plans for a Kanpai Planet website, which will be at the imaginative URL kanpaiplanet.com. There are plans for at the moment I have a buy me a coffee, one of these buy me a coffee. In fact, it's buymeacoffee.com/kanpaiplanet. Always appreciate the support. 100% is just reinvested directly into the channel. But you have one of these Patreons with like a tiered membership program as well. So there are plans for something like that. So yeah, as always, there's big ambition. We'll have to just see how that manifests itself. In terms of upcoming videos and reviews, a lot of new releases are coming out like right now, that have hit the market like 2 weeks ago, last week, next week, after actually a lull near the start of the year. I'm like, why didn't you guys space all of these out? So it's very, very annoying. I'm going to be playing a bit of catch up, but there's some really great whiskies that have hit the market that I want to review. Concurrent with that, some old classics. There's a video about Nika from the Barrel, Nika whiskey from the barrel. Very, very famous whiskey. You've covered it. I think it's one of your most viewed videos, actually. I'm going to be delivering, hopefully, some information that's really, never been, to be honest, even in Japanese. It's this video's a year in the making, and I've used the Wayback Machine to find Nika catalogs from the 1990s, which have given me a little clue as to the composition of this thing. So I just want to be committed to putting out content, of that level of, as I like to say, edutainment. So the future is bright, and let's see how things go.
Absolutely, no, I love it. I love it, and hopefully we'll be seeing Kanpai Planet on YouTube and beyond for many years to come. And that sort of leads me just to say thank you very much for giving me your time. Obviously with the time difference, it's difficult. We've been trying to get this done for ages now, haven't we? And it's I'm glad that we've finally managed to record it. And you're my last interview of this series, so Thank you very much for being the end bookend for it. And I'll say cheers and kanpai to you.
Kanpai Vin, it's been a real honor. I mean, you've had some really high profile people. We mentioned him a few times, but you've had, the face of the V Pub here, Roy, from Aqua Vitae. You had Billy Abbott, right? I mean, one of the most active professionals in the whiskey industry. That was a really great Dram Slam, by the way. I highly urge everybody to go back and watch that. And some other influencers and video producers and characters within the industry. So it's been a great series, and I'm honored, genuinely, to be a part of it. So thank you so much, Vin. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Thank you very much, mate. I'll say cheers.
Cheers and Kanpai.